from a galaxy far, far away.
And a bookshelf straight out of the 90s.
From Thrawn to Dantooine
And everything in between. This is Legends Look Back.
Hey guys, we have another exciting exclusive interview for you. Jared Mays, our host and fearless leader, at the opportunity at Legends Con to interview various authors and contributors to Star Wars Legends. And Jared, you're with us today to lead us into this interview with none other than Matthew Stover. Tell us about it.
Actually, I called him Mr. Stover all throughout the interview, and at the end, he said, and I kid you not, "You know you can call me Matt, right?" And I was like, "Okay, thank you, Mr. Stover." It was very much like a C-3PO and Master Luke situation.
Nice.
Where I couldn't. Yes, Sir Luke. Thank you, Sir Luke. Anyway, yeah, Matthew Stover is truly one of the greatest authors to ever put words into books that have Star Wars on the cover. And I'm so grateful I got the chance to talk to him. In fact, you called me the fearless leader. I was not so fearless around Matthew Stover. He's a very disarming individual. He has a way of like staring right into your soul. It's almost like he is operating on a different plane of existence than all the rest of us, which I think you can read in his writing, don't you think, Freddie?
Yeah, Jared, you messaged me, I think shortly after you met Stover, and you said Stover is a character. He is a personality, right? So I was hoping that he would be, because in my opinion, Stover's written some of the most interesting books in Star Wars, right? We've got Shatterpoint.
Yeah.
We've got, of course, the infamous Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith novelization. That one is, I think, down in everybody's favorite books. Top 10 at least. So
top 3, top 1, what?
Top 1, there you go. So I think it begs the question, who is Matthew Stover? Who is Matt, as we should call him, right, Jared?
I don't know if I can do that, man. I don't know. I said, I just really want to be. I want to be respectful, and I want to use honorific terms and treat you with honor. And he paused for a second, and he said, "I understand all the honor and all that. I just think it's bull." It was great. So. Yeah, Rick, what else did he write? We talked about Revenge of the Sith. We talked about Shatterpoint. He's got 2 or 3 more, right?
Yeah, Luke Skywalker, Shadows of Endor, and let's see, one of the New Jedi Order books, right?
Oh, yeah, Traitor.
Traitor, yep.
Yeah, Traitor, 2002. That was his first, I think. First Star Wars book?
Traitor is... Oh, was it?
Crazy.
I think so. Traitor is such a absolute mind bender of a book. He's got a character who, and we talk about this in the interview, who tells Luke tells Jason, everything I tell you is a lie. And then that's what he wrote in my book after this interview. So think about that, everybody, as you're listening to this interview. As soon as the interview was over, he wrote in my book, everything I tell you is a lie.
Oh, man.
Now, is he just quoting his book, or is he playing a psychological game with me? I'll tell you this much. The interview made me want to go home and rethink my life.
Hey, can I don't know if you looked at his page on the Wook, but he's got a quote at the very beginning of it that's perfect. Can I read it real quick?
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to do my best Matthew Stover voice, but I don't know. When I write a book, I put everything I have into it. So the more I have, the more the books become. Some people get freaked out by them. Most of the people who believe, mistakenly, that fantasy is about escaping reality. To them I say, if you have a problem with reality, you should be spending more time dealing with your life and less time reading popcorn fantasy.
That's so good, man. That's so true, too.
I think that's all we need, Jared.
That's so real for what it was like interviewing him. He had so many golden nuggets. And congratulations, listeners. These golden nuggets are now yours. So without further ado, let's get into our interview with Matthew Stover. Thank you to the good folks at Legends Con for giving us this opportunity to interview Mr. Stover, and I hope you all enjoy.
It's a tremendous honor to get to interview you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to come to LegendsCon.
It's my pleasure.
You're, of course, the author of so many fan-favorite books, from Traitor in the New Jedi Order, of course, to Shadows of Mindor, and, of course, everyone's favorite Revenge of the Sith novelization. And it's very unique, of course, Revenge of the Sith, in being one of the only books that ever had a direct involvement from George Lucas.
Other than the original.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Alan Dean Foster.
Right.
Too.
Well, can you tell us about what that relationship was like? How did it go working with George Lucas?
Well,
how much involvement did you have?
I didn't really work with him so much. I mean, I did a lot of work with like the editorial staff at Lucasfilm Licensing,
and then your stuff would be sent to him.
Right, but before I began, when I was basically roughing out the approach I thought I was going to take with this book. They flew me out, and I spent a whole afternoon, about 3 hours, interviewing Mr. Lucas.
Wow.
Sat in a room with both of my editors and I think an LFL lawyer. Both of my editors, that being my New York editor for Del Rey Random House and my Lucasfilm editor, Sue Rossby.
Sure.
At Skywalker.
And a lawyer. I love that.
and I think a lawyer and a tape recorder, so that I got a transcript of the conversation, so that I could refer to it, because I think I only asked him over the course of that 3 hours. I think I may have asked him 10 or 15 questions.
Wow.
And the amount of information, backstory, concept stuff that has never gotten into any of the media properties,
just in his brain,
staggering.
Right.
It blew my mind, because there was a rap on him as a filmmaker when among fandom and critics. Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, that these are basically just extended toy commercials and stuff like that. It's this is just Lucas cashing in. But when you talk to him about Jedi, this dude lives and breathes Jedi.
Yeah, the well-run Steve.
You could see it in him. He would start talking about the way some of these ideas developed and things that he think happened. He imagines are part of the galactic history and stuff, like, all this backstory and context and stuff that it was amazing.
Good.
It was amazing.
Wow.
He kind of is, in a sense, you could say he's kind of a fan of his own stuff, because it was his commitment and his obvious love for this.
Sure,
this
like
shit
he's a father of it, right?
It really got me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was worried when I asked that question, when you led off with, "Well, I didn't really work with him," and then you told this great story about sitting with him for 3 hours. And
right, but it wasn't like a collaboration. It wasn't a back and forth.
Yeah.
He let me ask him questions of the things that I wanted to know in order to do the kind of book I wanted to write. And it worked out pretty good.
Well, speaking of the back and forth, you mentioned earlier in your panel that the dragon metaphor that ends up coming through as a thread throughout Revenge of the Sith novelization, you said that metaphor changed.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the origin of the dragon metaphor and how it evolved along the way?
Well, the short version of a fairly long story is that I was looking for a kind of motif that would express Anakin's how close he was to the fall, right? Something that would just like a metaphor kind of thing. And originally, what I came up with was the idea of nuclear fusion fire as like a dragon, like a salamander, a fire elemental kind of thing, right?
Okay.
And that was Anakin's rage, and the more he progresses toward the dark side, the more the dragon was going to break out, right? And as this one is, it was like an organizing motif. It was referenced in almost every one of his scenes in one form or another. And 3 days before the book went to typesetting, I got a call and said, "Oh, by the way, all the stuff about the dragon, that has to come out." And I made a bit of a scene, which I'm not ashamed to admit. But the upshot of it was, as a result of that scene and an extended bout of furious pacing in the dark and a lot of drinking, I ended up with a terrible migraine. But I woke up in the morning with basically I was screaming at them that it's going to typeset in 3 days. How do you expect me to fix this in 3 days? And they kept saying, "Well, we have every confidence in your ability."
Well,
it's like, well, I don't. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? You think I'm just going to wake up in the middle of the night and I'll know how to fix it?
Right.
And as it actually happened, and as I had to admit to him, in the middle of the night when I wrote him the email about how I had woke up and knew exactly how to fix it and did it, the whole thing. I was like, well, what if it's not rage but fear?
Fear.
And it just, like, for me anyway, that made everything in the book. I thought it made everything in the book better, making that change.
Yeah.
And so I fought against it with everything I had. I mean,
sure.
I started out calm and persuasive and ended up screaming obscenities.
And then it all worked out.
Yeah, and then it all worked out because in the end, the fact is they were right and I was wrong.
Yeah. You don't always want to admit that in the moment.
Yeah. Well,
a last-minute rewrite.
Well, but it wasn't. This was not something I could anticipate. Yeah, I didn't. I had no idea that there was that much better idea.
Right.
That I had just completely missed.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I had missed, but they didn't know exactly what was wrong. George didn't know exactly what was wrong with it, but he knew something was wrong.
Right.
And he was right about that, and
yeah.
And God bless him.
Yeah, and that metaphor has been picked up tremendously just within the last couple of years. Recent canon authors have run with it.
I've heard that Mike Chen likes to.
Yeah.
It's something in his new book. There's some reference about that.
Yeah, he uses your style and some of your metaphors quite extensively as a way to honor you and show how much he loves your work.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I've never met the guy, but yeah. That's
maybe one of these days.
Yeah, well, no doubt. This stuff keeps happening.
Yeah, well, and not only does Mike Chen love your work, we all do. Revenge of the Sith is widely regarded as well as Traitor. I mean, so many. Shatterpoint regarded as among the very best Star Wars books ever written. In fact, I think that Revenge of the Sith, say what you will about the movie, the novelization, I think it is the highest rated objective score that we have on a book at utini.com. How does it feel for you as a creator to see your material so beloved by fans all these years later?
It is tremendously flattering. I mean, you have to remember that I'm a fan, right? And what every fan wants to do, really, is they want to get to play in the story. They want to be part of the story, and I got to do that. And people like it. That it just, doesn't get better than that. It could have gotten better if it wasn't a media tie-in and it was something I actually owned, so I could take full credit.
Right.
But
bigger royalties that way.
Yeah, bigger royalties. But the real reason that writers write is they want to be read, and that knowing that millions of people have read this book and a lot of them really love it is it does kind of keep me warm at night.
Good. I can see it in your eyes, that's for sure. Well, from Revenge of the Sith to Shatterpoint, to Traitor, to Mindor, your work seems to center around the moral gray areas in Star Wars. How and why do you think that is? And what's your approach to writing characters and situations that skirt that line?
Well, the answer to this question might be a little bit more complicated than we want to get into, but I am interested in the way people act when they have nothing left but their own resources, and when there's nobody around to see. That G.K. Chesterton, whatever it is, character is who you are in the dark. Right?
Yeah. Strip everything else
who you
away.
are when there's nobody watching and it's just you.
Yeah.
That's who you really are.
It is intriguing.
And so a lot of my fiction kind of revolves around crafting ways of stripping away the preconceptions that the characters themselves have about themselves and the world, and sort of giving them an opportunity to kind of educate themselves and move into a deeper understanding of both themselves, but also the world and where they fit in it.
Right.
And that kind of requires that stripping away process. Usually, in fiction, it requires trauma.
You torture the characters.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
I torture them until they start to tell the truth.
I want to back away a little bit from you here at the table. We're sitting in quite close quarters.
That's an obvious, exaggerated metaphor, but it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't even realize that. It was a fan on, I think on theforce.net, saying that one of the things that they liked about my books is that he's something about how I find where the characters hurt, and then I put my thumb on it and start pressing as hard as I can.
Oh yeah, right.
And I was like, yeah, that's kind of me.
Sure. But I could see that. Now, earlier in the panel, you mentioned that when you were writing Mindor, Luke is going through just a tremendously difficult time, and
Right.
he's kind of lost his way,
Right.
and he's having trouble finding light in his life. And you said that in your own personal life, at the time you were going through something
Exactly that.
quite similar.
Yeah.
I don't want to pry into anything personal, but would you care to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, as a general rule, happy people don't become serious writers. If you're happy with the world, you don't need to imagine a better one.
Okay.
Right? I was not a happy person, and some other health issues, and
not our business.
Right. It's just stuff, and I was in a desperately bad place, but I needed to write this book. That's one of the part of the reason that the tone of that book is so kind of bright and upbeat, despite the sort of monstrous events
pulpy,
that it
right.
describes. Well, I'm a big fan of Brian Daley.
Yeah.
I loved his Han Solo novels.
Sure.
Loved them. Still do. And so I was trying to evoke that without walking away from the kind of moral seriousness that has sort of come to define at least some of the more interesting parts of the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah.
And so that was my, but the reason I adopted that happy, upbeat tone was so that I could stand to write it, because it was a bad time for me. But
Luke Skywalker helped you to have some light in your life.
That's exactly true. I mean, that's exactly true. A lot of people who read my non-Star Wars stuff will find that all of my characters go through terrible things. But what I'm really interested in is how you come out the other side and put yourself back together and go on and try and live your life.
Yeah. Wow. Beautifully said. Well, speaking of characters who come out the other side, you wrote one character who did not. Ganner Rhysode's Last Stand. It's going to be a bit of a spoiler here for Traitor, so you've been warned, listeners. Ganner Rhysode's Last Stand is a real standout moment in the New Jedi Order. Talk to us about how you wove him into Traitor, and how difficult was it for you to get permission to kill him?
I volunteered to kill him. He was on the chopping block already.
Okay.
He was in I don't know, maybe Stackpole's novels.
I think so.
I think so. Mike wrote him as vain and pretentious, and all surface, no guts.
Yeah.
Right. And so there was a chart. They had a chart on the blackboard at the story conference at Skywalker with the list of all of the active Jedi. And the editorial team said, okay, who are we going to kill? And so the other guys who were a little bit more hip, Jim Lucino and who were a little bit more hip to the overall thing, did most of the selection, and then they came up with a list, and Ganner was on it, and basically we went around and I was like, oh, Ganner, you want to get rid of him? I'll kill that guy. I hate that ass. But a Jedi should not go out like a punk.
Right.
And I also have some personal convictions that sometimes when you're really, really in trouble, it's because you've been trying to be somebody you're not.
Okay.
Right? And that the path to real power in Star Wars is really self-knowledge. And so what happened with Ganner is I thought, well, what if he gets in a situation where being a vain, pretentious show-off is exactly what he needs to save the day.
Okay.
Right?
Light bulb.
Right. So that Ganner's Last Stand was very powerful for me because it was him taking all of the things that everyone hated about him and saying, I don't care what you think, this is who I am, and by being that,
right,
I'm going to save the galaxy.
It's redemptive.
Yeah. He became fully himself in that moment. He accepted.
I've got goosebumps.
All that bad part of him, all that showy, everything he was.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, well, okay, this is all I've got. I guess that's what I'm going to use.
But you gave him guts.
Well, the situation gave him guts. Right. There is it's a phrase that from a non-Star Wars book of mine that I like to quote. I call it the gift of no tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Right? When you don't have any, you're not going to get out. You don't have anything left to do except decide how you're going to die.
Yeah.
That for a certain kind of person, that isn't an object of terror. It's like, okay, it's finally okay.
It's liberating.
It's finally okay to just do whatever I want because I'm going to die anyway. I think I got this from my dad, actually, now that I think about it. If you don't mind just a little bit of a digression.
You're fine.
I was watching a movie, I think it was a Gene Hackman flick, about skydivers, stunt team skydivers. And inevitably in this kind of film, somebody's parachute doesn't open. Right? And I was watching this with my dad when I was about 10. And I was like, God, I just can't imagine anything worse than staring at the ground coming up at you and having all that time to realize you're going to die and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I don't like that.
And my dad said, well, you know what I would do? He said, I would put my feet together and point my toes, spread my arms, and hit the ground in the most beautiful swan dive anybody ever saw. Because if you're going out, you might as well do it with style.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's Ganner.
Wow.
He knew he was going out, so it's like, screw it. There's no point in pretending. Let's go big.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Stover, for that one. Wow. Well, we've got time for one more question here, and we'll let you go, but not in a swan dive. You famously talk about the dark side inside of Jason Solo, a controversial stance on the dark side, the one that I'm sure that has gotten you into all kinds of trouble over the years. But you do mention is not so different from how George Lucas himself talked to you about the dark side. Talk to us about the origin of that viewpoint and what compelled you to include it in your book.
Well, a lot of my books are kind of metaphysical. I think that's why it was an easy, not metaphysical in the usual sense, but one of my concerns is the way reality works. I like thinking about, if there are rules, what are the rules? And now I've forgotten where I was going with it. Tell me again what I'm talking about.
The dark side.
The dark side. Oh, right.
Where did that come from?
So I spent a lot of time thinking about the dark side and thinking about everything we know about what George Lucas thought about the dark side. And what you always see is that it is the dark side. The dark side struck me as the impulse. It's the impulse to control. Right?
Okay.
That's why the Jedi frown on casual use of the Force. Obi-Wan would be very cross if he saw I was doing this.
Sure.
Right. Because power to do good eventually becomes just power.
Okay.
Right. That's their theory. That's why they frown on that, because it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You use your power to make this better, and you think, well, with the same power I can make that better, and then I can make that better. Pretty soon you're organizing society around your preferences because you are superhuman, and you have the power to make people do what you want them to do.
Yeah. Anakin says, "We'll make them obey."
Right. We'll make them obey. That's the end. That's what the dark side is. Right. So I never thought of it as, I always thought that it was a conceptual error to think of it as like the devil in a Manichaean universe.
Sure.
I always thought that the Force is the Force, and the dark side is part of the Force. That's what. There's no light side of the Force, right? There's the Force, and then the dark side. The dark side is the stuff that stems from natural animal instincts to control, to dominate.
Yeah, or base instincts.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Wow.
And that was my thing. And also, as he himself said, that he was kind of inspired by that sort of Taoist sort of thing. And the very first line of the Tao Te Ching is, depending on the translator, the way that can be weighed is not the true way.
Ah.
It can also be translated as the force that can be forced is not the true force.
Oh, it's right there, huh?
It's right there. and I thought, well, what if we just lean in there?
Yeah.
Right? We start thinking about what the Force actually is, why it works the way it works, and what the dark side, what it says about it, right?
Sure.
And that's where that came from.
Wow. And the same thing is happening to me in this interview that always happens to me when I read your books, is I feel like everything I believed about the universe has been turned on its head. So thank you for that.
That is literally my purpose for being on this earth.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Stover.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
This is a Utini broadcast.